second set of speakers, I should say, for the day are Srivatsan and Seshadri from TVS Logistics. Please, I would ask Satish. Invite Satish to just introduce the speakers here. Thanks, Satish.
Yeah, good evening to all. I'm pleased to introduce Mr. Srivatsan and Mr. Seshadri Kannan. They are part of our TVS Logistics Supply Chain Solution Group. In fact, Srivatsan has expertise in terms of warehousing and plant operations, and Seshadri, he is working on the transportation and inbound expertise. So,
yes, sure.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, sure.
Hi everyone, good evening. My name is Srivatsan and this is Seshadri, and we're here from TVS Logistics. And okay, before I get into that, I just wanted to say I really enjoyed Shiva's talk a lot, and you know what I'm going to talk about is far on the other end of the spectrum. So he was letting you imagine. We are now trying to bring you back to reality to show how actual systems work. So bear with us, yeah. So what we're going to talk about today is technology, the advent of technology, data and information technology, systems, and how it has affected supply chain management as a whole. In my mind, how I'm planning to go about this is I want to start off with how supply chain management was done before IT and technology came into mainstream operations, design, support, or any such other systems, and then show you how a typical supply chain works, where technology now plays a role in supply chain management, current innovations that are taking place in supply chain management in terms of technology, and then finish up with where I think or where I feel the future of technology holds a role in supply chain management. Yeah, so almost as recent as 20 years back, there was no technology in supply chain management. We may have had standalone systems, but most of the operations, the control, design, everything was done on paper, and it was done in the back end. It was and it really is a very unglamorous role to say, Flipkart, but you don't know the guy who's delivering the parcel to you, and those are the supply chain experts. Those are the logistics people who make things happen and ensure that you get your things in the right place, right time, the right stuff. Yeah. So it was supply chain management per se was regarded as a necessity only for international brands and companies, and smaller people never really took it seriously because the cost impact was not known. What IT has done ever since it came in is that it's increased visibility across the supply chain ecosystem, and we call it a supply chain ecosystem because each element of the supply chain is very important, and it plays a very vital role in the end delivery of the products. So we also saw very low levels of communication. There was a lot of barriers between the various elements of a supply chain. So we'll get to that in a bit. There was no communication, there was no collaboration, and innovation was actually very low. From the customer standpoint or from the consumer standpoint as well, where the last mile, the customers were very less demanding, they were less aware, they were more patient, they were more understanding, and computing or order processing was not something that they actually talked about, whereas in comparison now to all the e-commerce and stuff like that. So moving on, some of the things that we take now for granted, like tracking vehicles, monitoring vehicles, order processing, how a typical order flows from the moment you place the order to until it is fulfilled, inventory management. In those days it was impossible to keep track of your inventory. Maintaining first in first out, knowing your obsolete items, knowing how much to keep, where to keep, the cost of inventory, whether you had a stock out leading to back orders, which led to extra processing from within the system. Those things were impossible to keep track of. From a manufacturer's point of view, it was also very difficult for them to coordinate their production schedules with their suppliers. So lead times were really high. There was no concept of a lean system back then, primarily because there was no visibility and there was no data or a control mechanism as such, which all eventually led to high operating costs. So I'm going to spend some time on this slide because this is a typical supply chain ecosystem. You have your customer, who's your end consumer. You have your distributors or retail outlets. You have your distribution centers or warehouses, manufacturing facilities, factories, and the raw material suppliers. Now we know that the point of sales happens here. So the point of sales data is generated at the retail outlet by the customer, and so there's an order flowing in a cascading effect up the value stream. So what happens is, when the point of sales data available to this guy is not available to any of the other entities of the supply chain. What this means is that when you do a demand forecast, you're trying to predict what your customers are going to buy, there's a certain element of variance which is built into the system. I don't know how much you guys know of variance or probability, statistics and all that, but understand that in any time you try to predict, there's always an element of variance in it. And when the distribution center tries to predict what the retail outlet is going to buy, his prediction has already got an element of variance in it. So when he tries to predict on top of that variance, there's further variance. And this is something that we call the bullwhip effect in the supply chain. As you move up the value stream, there's a lot of variance which is inbuilt into the system or into the data. Eventually what happens is the supplier has no clue, or what the supplier thinks he needs to deliver is completely not on the same page as what a customer actually wants. So how do we reduce this variance along the value chain? It was very easy. All you had to do was knock down the barriers and make this data available to everybody so that they could use this information to model their business in a much more efficient manner. Another thing which happens is also the lead time. The lead time in between what a customer wants to when he gets it was really high, because by the time that it went through all the levels and reached the supplier or the manufacturer and they made the changes to their supply chain and they actually rolled it out to him, the customer's wants had actually changed. It was never in line. It was more of a push supply chain rather than a pull. You flooded the market with your product and the customer got to choose from whatever was existing. He didn't have it. The feedback from the customer took very long to implement. From a cost point of view also, this was very difficult to control because of, like I said earlier, the high levels of inventory. Higher lead times and unable to predict exactly what your customer means that you need to stock everything up. You need to keep everything available to the customer so that you don't lose your sales. So which also led to a lot of wastage, obsolescence along the supply chain. So this is why we call it an ecosystem, because none of the elements can exist without one another. We'll move ahead. Ever since data, information and technology came into play, what we've seen is increased communication with the advent of emails. We saw electronic data interchange, which made data available to all elements of the supply chain. We saw ERP systems, enterprise resource planning systems, coming into the play where people could actually utilize their resources more efficiently, reduce the wastage. We saw data management applications. We saw third-party applications, which you guys, lots of you guys must be aware of. Software as a product or software as a service. So there's a lot of third-party applications in the play right now. And in terms of designing of a supply chain, we saw a lot of simulation tools. Like, say for example, we use a simulation tool to simulate our truckloads when they move from, say, Chennai to Pune or Chennai to Gurgaon, to see which gives us the maximum utilization, because we have differing package sizes. And what is the optimal mix of the package sizes that can be put into a standard size of a truck so that the cost per package reduces or the cost of movement reduces. So we use these kind of simulation tools to increase the efficiency and utilization of our trucks. All of this became possible with the advent of technology and people like you. So the benefits that this brought about in the system was that we were able to design supply chain in a much more efficient manner. We were able to collaborate with all elements of a supply chain. Even if we are, if say our client has engaged us, we were able to engage with the client's customers and our client's suppliers in order to make the value proposition that we give to our clients that much more valuable, because it benefits all elements of the supply chain. We were able to utilize our efficiencies more, we were able to utilize our resources more efficiently. We had efficient database management, so the data that was available or that was gathered, historical data, is now able to help us predict the future. And tracking, we'll come to that also in a bit. Now all of this, what it led to is cost reduction. So the supply chain management cost has effectively been reduced by the advent of information technology and data into supply chain management. This is pretty simple. We just wanted to show you the role of IT in SCM. Like we spoke, it helps in transaction execution or order processing until fulfillment. It helps in collaboration and coordination. It also helps in decision support systems, because rather than feedback systems, now we have control systems, which means that near real-time data is available to us on a day-to-day basis, because of which we are able to take decisions to control rather than to check actually what happened, what went wrong. Let's move on. The impact. Okay, the impact that this has had, we will be going into detail with a few of these, but we just wanted to give an overall picture here. The impact that information technology has had on supply chain is along all the elements. So if you take facility, you have better design, you have better process, you have system control, utilization of resources, etc., what we talked about. If you take logistics, there's more transportation scheduling becomes easy, cross utilization of resources becomes easy. You're able to track your vehicles and you're able to fulfill that much more faster with lesser lead times. Vendor management, you're able to bring all your vendors onto a same platform so that you can interact with them and give them the benefit of knowing your design so that they can design themselves in a similar way, and that leads to leaner supply chain all around. Everybody's happy. Procurement, similarly, similar to vendor management, procurement, you have vendor managed inventory, you have inventory tracking systems, etc. And in terms of operations, WMS, TMS, warehouse management, transportation management, ERPs, etc., and so forth. So all of this has now played a major impact in the way that we even view a supply chain. What technology has actually done is it has completely changed the policies, processes and systems in such a way that we now cannot even think that we can exist without this technology, but it has completely changed the process or perception of how we can design a supply chain. We'll get to that also. Right. So before I go into anything else, there are benefits and there are detriments to technology in SEM. Benefits definitely outweigh the detriments. It's that it's relatively less capital intensive, it's environment friendly, it's very clean, it can be implemented anywhere because it does not have restriction of geography or resources or anything of that sort. It reduces dependency on people, where a specific resource is not available and the whole system shuts down. It's not like that anymore. It reduces the dependency. It reduces wastage by controlling the inventory, and it gives you better visibility and control across all elements of your value chain. And detriments is, they are there. Data security and privacy is an issue. Of course, there are workarounds for that, but they're pretty expensive. And lack of personal interaction. Now, this is important because of globalization and also because of enhanced communication via electronic media and not by face-to-face communication. The personal interaction between the vendors, manufacturers, suppliers, or service providers, everybody is reduced drastically, which means that the ownership of the system is also up in the cloud, to be honest. So this also reduces the commitments that service providers or suppliers have towards their end clients or customers. But Yeah, but this again is up to each element in the supply chain to control. It is not it's not something that's very common. It is something that can easily be reworked, and we're happy to say that we actually do a pretty good job of it. So okay, impact of IT. I have got time. Impact of IT specifically in terms that I told you I would be expanding on a little bit. In terms of costing, ordering costs, processing costs are reduced significantly because of the lesser number of paperwork, the lesser number of touch points that an order has to go through before it leads to fulfillment. Manufacturing costs have gone down because of better utilization of resources, because of leaner and greener supply chain, and also reduced lead times. Your inventory costs have gone down because you are now able to predict almost with a certain degree of accuracy as to what you should keep and where you should keep it. Wastage or obsolescence of your inventory also goes down. Logistics cost, because of better planning, utilization, scheduling, that goes down. Ancillary and overhead costs. Now, ancillary and overhead costs is kind of specific to the e-commerce industry. I mean, think about it. In e-commerce, all it has is a website which runs on a specific server, and it's able to do much more sales than a retail outlet could ever perform. And they have absolutely no overhead costs. And when I say overhead costs, I mean in terms of a physical infrastructure with racks and bins and shelves where you're able to, we need to go and pick out items. So they've eliminated that. I'm sorry, I think this is the opposite of what Mr. wanted to do. So he wanted to bring things more physical. Now the physical need is completely being eliminated by the e-commerce industry, and we're completely going digital by this aspect. In terms of policies and processes, like I said, because of visibility along the supply chain, what we are able to do is the distribution centers, manufacturers, suppliers and service providers are able to work in tandem and collaboratively innovate in order to bring more value to their end customers. They're able to build to suit instead of just getting their design out there and then getting feedback 6 months later and then trying to do something. That doesn't happen anymore, because the customer is also they know exactly what they want. So it makes it that much more easier because of technology for us guys to build to suit. It reduces the inventory holding cost, like I said. It has led to tremendous globalization of all our brands and products. Something that would have never been imagined 20 years ago is happening now, and that's predominantly because of technology. It leads to faster turnaround times and vendor managed inventory, which is a completely new level of taking technology in order to control your supply chain costs. In terms of operations, and this is where it becomes important, because here it is used in day-to-day lives. In terms of operations, warehouse management systems, enterprise resource planning, transportation systems, global positioning systems, GPS devices, and EDI. Now all these systems control your supply chain on a day-to-day, hour-to-hour, minute-to-minute. They're able to control your supply chain. They give you feedback, they give you near real-time data for decision making, and essentially they give you the bang for buck, which is what every supply chain design engineer aspires to work towards. And without technology, none of this would have been possible. Going into what is currently going on in the supply chain domain, cloud computing. I'm sure all of you have heard of it and you've been using it too, but cloud computing has again, it has redefined supply chain and the way it works, because all of the ERP systems, WMS, TMS, all the systems are now online and they are cloud based, which means that it is accessible anywhere, and any person sitting here in Chennai, I can control a truck which is probably all the way in Gurgaon, and I can tell it where to go. I can make real-time decisions to control my supply chain and make sure that none of the elements are lost in the process. It gives me better visibility. It gives me it helps to troubleshoot problems before they occur. Here I actually read something today on Quora that I wanted to share. It was called the Big Fish story or something. It was a social social networking experiment carried out by someone called Andrew. I don't know where he is, but what he had actually done was, Andrew was earlier, some time back, he was a waiter in a Big Mac restaurant. So they have these fish fillet burgers, in which the fish is the patty, right? This fish takes a long time to cook. It takes almost 20 to 25 minutes to cook if you're making it fresh from the freezer. So customers were very unhappy that they had to wait for so long. So what these guys used to do was they used to pre-cook it until something, it was called some technical cooking term I don't know about. So they used to pre-cook it and keep it a certain amount of fish on a day-to-day basis, and based on the demand they used to cook it to completion, and they were able to service those orders within, say, probably 4 to 5 minutes. This made the customers really happy. But what happened was that on some days they found out that they had excess of those pre-cooked fish which went to waste because it cannot be carried over for the next day, and on some days they felt terribly short. So what this guy did was he went back and looked at their historical sales data of the sales of these fish fillet burgers, and he figured out that on an average the number of pre-cooked fish that they have was consistent. It was right, there was nothing wrong with it. But even then, why was it that some days had an excess and some days had a very, they were falling short terribly? He says that he was just looking out of his window and it was raining one day, and he was thinking, what if people order more fish on rainy days? It was just a random thought which occurred to him, but he was struck by the idea. He went back and checked the sales of fish against the days in which there was rainfall, and he actually found out that people buy more fish fillet burgers when there's rain, and on the days when there's no rain they buy significantly less number of those fish fillet burgers. So with this data, with that data and that technology that he was able to access, he was able to figure out that he could save the wastage and also reduce the processing time of those orders, which made his management happy because he was saving cost. It made the customers happy because he was saving them time and he could process those orders faster. Now, this is just an example of, this is like a typical supply chain. You have your demand, you have your processing units, and you have your suppliers. So what we try to do is exactly what Andrew did. We try to read those data, analyze the data, and design the supply chain in such a way that everybody's happy. This was just a small anecdote I read on Quora, and you guys can probably look it up too. So where is supply chain headed in the future? Okay, I'm a big fan of machine learning. I don't know how many of you all here are, or what if you know what machine learning is. To give a very brief introduction, machine learning is where a system is able to automatically learn based on the data that has been fed into it and reconfigure itself to give the desired output. Now, machine learning in supply chain is something that fascinates me really, because imagine rerouting of a truck. In my mind, I'm imagining rerouting of a truck somewhere by a system where there's no human intervention, just because of some data that has been fed into it by the system itself. The system generated data is used by the system to reconfigure the supply chain on a real-time basis. There has already been some study which is going into it, and who knows, maybe this is the future, dynamic supply chain control on a real-time basis by machine learning applications. So that's it. That's all we had for you today. I hope it was not too boring. So we would really like to thank KCOM for this opportunity and take any questions.
I have one question. We hear about supply chain benefits, etc., for large corporates per se. For large corporates, we have many examples, where it has reduced significantly, cost, etc. But what about, in your experience, for small and medium businesses as such? Do you see that applicable? And if so, what has been your experience specifically in India? Is that being, implemented?
Yeah, like I said, supply chain is all about controlling costs in the end. Eventually, it all boils down to that. And in our experience or in whatever we've seen so far, who doesn't want to control costs in this day and age, right? If there is a cheap alternative to your needs, which will serve your business better, and in that make your customers happy and make you happy and give you more bang for buck, or give you more profits, more dividends, people take it. And we have seen examples of that. It's not just the big players or the huge manufacturing units that actually come to us or any supply chain design engineer for help. It's in actually, you know, if I could be as bold as saying that smaller companies have a lot of low-hanging fruits that larger companies don't have in terms of supply chain management. So it is definitely possible to give a better solution, because number one, they have low-hanging fruits which can be easily plucked, and you know, you can easily get the benefits. And number two, they're more flexible. Larger companies, those who've been around for a long period of time, change management becomes a process. So it's time consuming. It's not impossible, but it's time consuming. Smaller companies, it's easier because it's that much new into the system. They're malleable to new ideas. And so yes, to answer your question, SEM and design is definitely applicable to small, medium or large scale firms. And honestly, medium and small scale firms make the problem that much more interesting for us to solve.
Also adding on to this point, working with smaller industries, there are fewer constraints to work around with. So the fewer constraints that we have to work around with. As a design engineer, we have fewer constraints, and as a manufacturer, they have fewer constraints to look up on their supply chain also. So that's another advantage that we have with the smaller companies.
I have a question. I mean, most of the presentation I think had a lot of IT component to it, the technology part of it. So, I mean, how strong is IT driving your strategy, or is strategy drives IT? Like, how is the equation there? Like, as a company, you'll have your own business strategy and objectives to be, where to go 5 years from now and so on, and you would probably leverage IT to meet that particular goals. Is that way, or is it like, you see potential IT solutions and then that drives your strategy?
I would say a little bit of both. As a company, what we are seeing is that IT plays a really integral role in where we want to be and how we want to get there. But if supposing there is not something that we are pursuing and it's available, and we see that it has a benefit in a problem that we are currently facing, we definitely explore it and try to implement that change. So we are actually from the supply chain solutions team, to speak. So it's kind of our job to do that. So that's what we do.
So you do build your own custom solutions in-house, or is it like, you buy only from like the external world?
Actually, not sure. I think Satish would be able to answer that.
You do build IT solutions in-house, or is it like you buy from the external world?
In terms the larger IT applications like ERP and all, it's outsourced. We have the service providers who actually develops kind of customization, as well as the ERP is outsourced. Whereas smaller IT programs are kind of interfaces. Normally we do in-house. We have a IT team. We do develop that.
Sometime back I came across a term called green SCM, wherein like say they talked about the environmentally efficient SCM process. How much of focus is there on that? Like say the question was not basically IT part of it, just like say on how much of focus is on green SCM nowadays?
Yeah, we do focus on green SCM in certain aspects. I would like to just give an example of where we are at green supply chain management. When you look at packaging solutions, when you look at packaging solutions, now the company is going for more. Usually we have a lot of more wooden pallets, which is against the way of green supply chain. So in terms of packaging solutions, more detail is going into having eco-friendly packages like cartons or steel pallets, plastics. That's one area where we think TVS LSL is also looking at in terms of green supply chain management. Other areas of improvement are still being explored.
more questions, and we should thank Srivatsan and Seshadri for the excellent
Thank you so much.
thing. And